Hi everyone, thank you for joining. Thank you for coming back after the beautiful sunshine today and joining us for this bid writing webinar. I'll crack straight on because we've got a lot to do. So a quick introduction for me. I'm from the Growth Hub, and then we'll pass over to Jackie and Chris to run through the main content, and then we'll be doing Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions that you want to get off your chest now, please feel free to put them at the Q&A and we'll get to those at the end, or as you're going through the content, if you want to push those through as you're thinking of them, please do that. So my name's Keris. I'm a Senior Engagement Specialist with the Growth Hub. Just some housekeeping. If you want to, so the Q&A is at the top there, is at the bottom there with the little question mark. If you want to ask a question anonymously, you can tick that little box there, and we will, if there's anything that's quite specific to your organization, if you want to ask a question and we don't get to it for whatever reason, if it's a bit too specific to go into on a webinar, then we will have that question. And we can follow that up later because we get all the questions recorded in our analytics. Okay, so the Growth Hub. So what is the Growth Hub? The Growth Hub is, we're a signposting service for businesses in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and they can come to us and we'll be signposted to the support that's available. We're going through a bit of a transition period at the moment, so we're going through a bit of a change of our processes and team. So we're not I'm not ready to tell you exactly what that looks like yet, but in the next coming weeks and months, that we'll be able to share what the new model looks like and who we can support. But we're still here at the moment. We're still answering the phone, and we're still signposting you to any support that's available on a national level. And that's generally through talking to one of our team in a business review. So we can do that over the phone or on a video call, and we can talk to you all about your business and the options that are available to you at the moment. And you can also keep up to date with all the things that are going on, any kind of national or local business related news. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and any updates on what future funding or future services will be on there as well. Okay, so I'm going to go off screen, and I might pop back on while we're doing polls, actually. I might stay on screen because I think the first few slides is a poll. So if you want to, shall I stop sharing? There we go. And then you can share now, Jackie. Or shall I launch the poll while we're talking?
All right. Okay. Let's go.
So we're just going to ask a quick poll that should come on screen, and I'll read that out for the people that are watching this back. So the poll here is that have you ever applied? What's your experience of bid writing to date? So have you never applied for a grant? You've applied for a grant, or you've applied for a grant and other types of funding. So quite a split here. So we've got 40. It's changing. So 46%. I'm going to go with 46% of people have never applied for a grant, so that's nearly half, and then a split in between of 23 to 30% who have applied for a grant and other funding. So that's the kind of split. So a sort of 50%, I'd say, have never applied for a grant, so they're going to find all this very useful.
Here's hoping. Okay, hi.
Okay,
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie George, and I'm a bid writer with about 25 years experience now. So hopefully you'll learn something tonight, and I can share some of my expertise. So understanding grant funding is essential for anyone seeking financial support for their projects. Grants provide opportunities for organisations to secure funds without the expectation of repayment. Hopefully you can see my slides, I didn't check. So what we are going to do tonight is begin with an overview of grant funding, discussing definitions, purpose, various types of grants available. Then we will cover how to identify potential opportunities and evaluate eligibility criteria, and then delve into the critical components of writing a winning proposal, followed by managing grant-funded projects effectively. And then we will share some top tips and best practices for sustained success. So the purposes of grants. Grants are financial contributions given to support specific projects or initiatives. They're provided by, amongst others, local and national government, lottery and charitable trusts, and they're for a wide range of activities, so be it regeneration, heritage, culture, arts, health, environment, research, development and innovation, community development, or business development, which requires new products or new services, or to do things quicker. Grant funding terminology is a bit different to our everyday language. So I thought I would just go through some of the key terms and that we use. So the project, this is the term that the grant funder uses to describe the total spend that you're applying for the grant funding for. So it could be specific equipment, it could be specific bits of research, development, and innovation, it could be premises refurbishment. So it's not your general, running, or not normally your general running cost of the business. The intervention rate is the percentage that the grant funder will pay towards the items. So an item costing 50,000, 25% intervention rate, the grant would be £12,500. The match funding is the percentage of money that you are putting in towards the project. Displacement is the financial support of one organisation having a negative effect on a competitor. So if a council built a community facility that also catered for business meetings, that could take away trade from hotels, cafes with meeting rooms. So it's just something to be aware of when you're designing your projects. Procurement is the process you have to follow when you're purchasing the item or items that you'll hopefully be getting grant funded for. Funders will have their own policy to follow, and it's crucial that you follow these rules. Capital items are items such as machinery, vans, building work, and revenue is not income as you would normally expect, but it's items such as wages, rent, and marketing. Some funders will only fund capital, some funders will only fund revenue, and some funders will fund both. Defrail is the process for claiming the grant. So you will need to evidence the invoice and the bank statement to evidence the purchase. And some grant funders won't expect this process, but others will. So it's just important that you read the rules when you're applying. And subsidy control is the framework governing how public funding authorities provide financial support to organisations in the UK. That used to be called state aid, if anyone's been doing this for a while. So it's really important that you understand the subsidy control that the grant is being offered, and it's worth designing or checking that when you develop your project. Now, the advantages of grants, and note they're about even Stevens about the advantages and the disadvantages. So note there is no payback needed unless conditions are not complied with. This is really rare, I might add. So in the 20 odd years that I've been doing this, I've only heard of 2 or 3 cases of clawback. Generally, the grant funders probably don't want to go through the administrative burden of it, but it's something to bear in mind. You don't lose control as you would have with an angel investor or a business angel, but it could curtail what you do and slow you down. It can reduce risk. It shows confidence in the applicant by a third party, and it enables projects to happen which might not happen without the support of grant funding. However, there are disadvantages of this so-called free money. The availability of funds and the fit with the scope of the grant. So those of us in Cornwall at the moment will know that there are significantly less grants around now that there were, I don't know, 2 years ago. So the availability of funds locally is diminished considerably. The application process is time-consuming, difficult and lengthy. Don't underestimate the amount of time that it will take. Projects generally can't start until funds have been approved. The applicant may need to fund costs upfront before being reimbursed. And this very much depends on the funder. So again, read the rules. And post-grant monitoring will be undertaken. So make sure you keep all of the paperwork and evidence that you have collated over the course of your project development and delivery. Some funders might audit you in 5 years' time, so keep your paperwork for a long time. Now, general rules. You must need the grant financially, and that might sound a really stupid thing to say, but the funders will look at your bank statements and accounts. And if you've got quite a few thousand in your bank account and you're asking for, I don't know, a grant of 5,000, they will question it. You must deliver the outputs of the objectives. Sorry, you must deliver the objectives of the grant provider. So they all have their terms of reference. They all have priority areas of things that they're looking to fund. So make sure that your project meets with those objectives. You must deliver the outputs and the outcomes specified by the grant giving body. And again, this will change depending, or be different depending on the grant funder. Some might want you to create jobs, some might want you to create new products or services, generate new community provisions. So again, have a look at the rules for what they're looking for. It needs generally to be step change and not business as usual. Now, some funders, especially for charitable trusts, will fund business as usual and will fund core costs, but these are quite hard to come by. Cash flow forecasts may be required. Previous sets of accounts will be required, and a variety of policies, again, depending on the funder, will be required. Generally speaking, equal opportunities, environment and procurement policies will be requested. The big thing to remember is grant funding isn't guaranteed. So you need to weigh up the opportunity cost of delaying a project whilst you wait for the outcome of the process. In some cases, this could take up to 6 months. So you need to think, is it worth waiting 6 months for a decision, which ultimately could be a no, unfortunately. So yeah, do weigh up the pros and the cons. Any questions on that lot before I move on? No. Okay.
There's no particular questions about that specific bit, but there is questions for the end.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so identifying grant opportunities. This is a critical first step in the funding process. It involves researching potential funders and understanding their goals and their priorities. Identifying the appropriate funders is essential for success. Involves researching organisations that align with your project's mission and understanding the funding priorities and the application process. There are a number of grants out there, and it's a challenge in itself to work out which ones you could be eligible for, or even which ones are available at the time. So use the local growth hub as your first port of call, or a funding specialist, or one of the portals if they're available. It's important to research those organisations that align with your project's missions and values, and just make sure that you understand that process. Crafting a compelling grant proposal is crucial in securing funding. A well-written proposal articulates your project's vision and demonstrates its potential impact. So each grant has a specific guideline specific guidelines that outline the requirements for proposals. Understanding these guidelines ensures that your application meets all necessary criteria and submission protocols. A compelling narrative captures the funder's attention and clearly communicates the significance of your project. It should outline your goals, methodology, and expected outcomes effectively. Make sure you follow word counts. A lot of the application forms now will have a word count. It's really tricky to make sure that you have that compelling narrative within the word count. So spend time on getting that right. And then, as I said earlier, they generally want something in return. There's no such thing as free money. So they will want outputs and outcomes. So an output is the immediate result of an activity or project, and it's usually achieved by the time that the project has been funded. An outcome is the impact of that activity, and it's usually achieved within 3 years, or 5, depending on the funder of the after the funding activity was delivered. A detailed budget is essential for demonstrating how funds will be allocated. Make sure it's realistic, transparent, aligns with the project's objectives, and showcases responsible financial planning. And most importantly, don't leave it to the last minute. Give plenty of time to develop the project, collate supporting documentation, and write the application documents. Don't underestimate the amount of time that it will take to develop the project, write the application, and even deliver the project through to the final claim. Bearing in mind, the amount of time that it will take to run it from start to finish. Do you, as an organisation, have the capacity to do this, or do you need to bring in external support? So managing the grant-funded project. So once a grant is secured, effective management of the project is critical to its success and sustainability. This includes meeting reporting requirements and maintaining accountability. Prior preparation prevents poor performance, as we all know. So write a project that can be delivered and not just capable of getting the funding approved. I think many of us who have managed projects, it's all very well writing that bid, but once you're given that project to manage and you can't understand it yourself, you sort of think, oh great, I'm on a hiding to nothing here. So make sure that it's a project that can be delivered. Plan it. Procurement, spend time to get the procurement right. Write your specification, get people to check it, make sure that you are really clear of what you're looking to purchase, be it a service or a product. It could be contractors, building contractors, and make sure you do your due diligence of suppliers. Project teams are crucial. Define your roles and responsibilities. Does everyone understand what the project aims to achieve, and does everyone understand their individual roles? Make sure you undertake regular project reviews. So get your project team together. Make sure that you all understand what you're doing and when. And make sure you've got your project documentation, your risk registers, your communication plan, your minutes, your procurement records, your cash flow forecasts. Excuse me. And most important, communicate throughout the team at all times. Communication is key to a successful project delivery. So funders often require reports on project progress and financial expenditures. Timely and accurate reporting fosters trust and demonstrates accountability to your funders. Mostly, most of them will want quarterly reports, or the big grant providers anyway. So make sure you submit them in a timely manner and make sure that you provide all of the information that they're asking for. Proper budget management is key to ensuring that funds are used effectively. It involves tracking expenses, making adjustments as necessary, and ensuring transparency throughout the project. And again, when you're in communication with the funders, if you are having any problems with regards to cash flow or your project running behind time, they will all want to see this evidence of that you're managing the budget and the project effectively. So make sure all of your paperwork is up to date and accurate. Successful grant funding requires strategic planning, excuse me, relationship building, and a commitment to continuous improvement. Adopting best practices can enhance your chances of receiving support. Excuse me. Establishing and maintaining relationship with funders can lead to future opportunities. Engage with them by sharing progress and outcomes, share pictures and express gratitude for their support. So many funders will have publicity requirements. Make sure that you follow that publicity requirement and put the logos on and acknowledge in any press releases. So that will help for future engagement and hopefully future funding. And after completing the project, reflect on the processes and outcomes to identify areas for improvement. Have a lessons learned log throughout. Continuous learning helps enhance your ability to secure future funding and implement successful projects. Okay, in summary, by approving grants, funders aim to aid applicants who have a positive impact on lives, industry and the economy. It's not free money though, they do want something in return. And a grant isn't guaranteed, it is a competitive application process. A few years ago, one of my clients put this following quote in an email to me, that he's starting to realise that it's a lot of paperwork without complete certainty. And it is, but you have got to be in it to win it at the end of the day. Okay, so navigating the world of grant funding can be challenging, but it can be rewarding. By understanding the fundamentals, identifying opportunity, and crafting compelling proposals, managing projects effectively, you can unlock valuable funding for your initiatives. Okay. So there's a little plug here for me. So as I said right at the start, I've got 25 years in experience in feasibility studies, project development, business planning, funding applications, project management and evaluation. I have supported all sectors over the years, secured over 25 million. And with Chris and myself, we've undertaken over 20 independent evaluations now. So if you do need any support with any of your projects, then please do to get in contact. My QR code there on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, we've got a few questions. There was one about governance. Now I know Chris is going to cover a little bit of that, so I'm going to park that one till the end. Somebody's asked, I'm developing services for carers and those living with dementia and work for Disability Cornwall. I'm concerned with local services links in our community in Camborne. Is there a structure whereby I could approach local businesses as the former employees of my target group for a GoFundMe or social responsibility donation? What was your feelings on that?
So a GoFundMe would be a public portal anyway, so you could by all means contact employers and make them aware through social media that you've got a GoFundMe, and then hopefully those organisations will pledge their support. Definitely, it's a good marketing tool.
And that's unrestricted funding, isn't it? I suppose you've still got some of the same criteria that you have to deliver what you've said you're going to on your GoFundMe. So, but it's largely, it won't have the some of the structures and the maybe as much paperwork as GoFundMe does.
But don't underestimate the amount of time and admin that it will take to do a GoFundMe. That some of the investors, so to speak, will want a lot of information and a lot of hand holding. And it's a social media presence and keeping that momentum going is quite time consuming and exhausting for some.
So somebody's saying they've had a grant, but have been quoted £600 for a project evaluation. Is there a course we can use? Maybe I'm assuming they're saying that they want to be able to do that themselves, but they want to have some training to do it. Please drop that in the chat if that's not my understanding for the questioner.
Yeah. Let's just get some clarity on that one. It depends on the size of the project, but £600 sounds quite reasonable.
Okay.
Depending on the size of the project. Let's leave it like that.
Okay, fair dues. Okay. So yeah, she's come back and said that's what it is. So your advice to her would be that does sound reasonable, but maybe if they want to undertake the evaluation themselves, what would your advice be on that?
I would I think it's very important to get an independent evaluation. So if
somebody has something there and said they were told that an independent evaluation was required, so yeah.
So yeah, don't undertake it yourself. Try and find an independent evaluator rather. But again, it depends on the size of the project. So you know, if it's a multi-million-pound project and someone's quoted £600, I would suggest that's quite light.
That is. Chris, did you want to jump in? Please continue to put questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end.
Yep, I shall just share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my slides. So my name's Chris Cotter. I've been working with businesses and charities, including social enterprises in various roles for the past 20 years. Some of the work that I do is around funding application support, funding strategies, obviously Jackie's mentioned evaluation, impact assessment, social value reporting. So building on Jackie's sort of really good overview of how to approach applying for grants successfully, I'm going to zoom out slightly now and take a look at the bigger picture and how funding fits into the overall journey of building a sustainable purpose-led organization. So over the next sort of 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we're going to look at the different stages of development a purpose-led business will go through from startup to becoming established, and what that tends to mean for the funding opportunities that are out there and some of the choices that that you get to make. So funding, it's a journey. It's not a one-off event, and one of the biggest challenges I see for organizations is they spend a lot of time chasing funding. One, because it's available, but rather than focusing on whether that funding is fitting into their development journey, there is this kind of decision that because the funding's there, we should be applying for it. I think it's safe to say that funding isn't a one-size-fits-all. Different stages of your organization's maturity come with different levels of risk, different capacity and financial stability. And all of that has an impact on the type of funding. And the funding that's right for you at the beginning could be completely wrong for you later on. So the challenge is to start thinking about funding not as a series of applications, but potentially as a pathway. Over time, organizations will ideally move from relying heavily on grants to a more balanced mix of income, and sometimes where appropriate, depending on the size of the organization and where you're moving, even considering debt finance. Now, for charities and social enterprises, that's commonly referred to as social investment, but it is essentially loans. I'll give you some examples as we move through the presentation. The journey looks different for every organisation. There is a key idea behind it, though, and that is that the right type of funding at the right time can strengthen your organisation, whereas the wrong type of funding, it can create pressure, risk, and it can sometimes stall growth. Now, you might be wondering, how does funding stall growth? If you are always looking to apply for the funding that's available, you'll spend a lot of time trying to find that funding and applying for it in order to maintain the status quo. These funds are usually project specific. When they run out, you have to replace them, and that creates a inertia in the organization. It kind of feels like you're a hamster on the wheel, chasing funding to keep doing what you've always done, and not really giving you the time to look forward, develop income streams that are linked to what you do best, and you end up competing in a highly crowded funding environment. So if we look at the early stage, which is generally the first year of funding, like any business, you're going to be focused on turning an idea into something real. You're going to be testing whether there's a need, exploring the feasibility of projects and maybe the services and the support and the products that you're selling. You're going to be building early relationships and putting sort of basic governance in place. A lot of the time, income's going to be uncertain, and with little or no track record, funding opportunities are potentially going to be few and far between. Grants will be the most appropriate form of funding for you at this stage. Funders are going to be looking at backing potential. They're going to be looking at community benefit and social purposes. They understand that at this point in your development, you are still trying to work things out, and they're prepared to take a risk. There are a small number of funders operating in this startup phase, so it is an incredibly competitive environment. How competitive? You might be asking yourself. Well, roughly 10,000 active charitable funders in the UK, distributing roughly 3.5 billion a year. 70% of that funding goes to the top 500 top 500 charities in the UK. So that's 30% left to split between roughly 200,000 and growing active purpose-led businesses. That includes charities and social enterprises. So it's an incredibly tough environment in which to raise money. Somebody mentioned a GoFundMe. So crowdfunding is a great way of generating some initial seed capital. It's a good way of testing the market for your ideas. It's a great way of evidencing a demand or need. A successful crowdfunding campaign shows your community understands what you are trying to achieve. Maybe that's fill an unmet need or a gap in provision. Another benefit of crowdfunding is that a lot of the platforms have match funding from partner organisations. So Crowdfunder UK in Newquay has Cornwall Council match funding, which can be sometimes up to £5,000, and is a great way to increase your crowdfunder campaign. What generally doesn't fit well in this early stage development is repayable finance. If income's not predictable, taking out loans that need to be repaid is going to put a huge strain on your cash flow in the early stages, whereas using grant funding to build strong foundations to test, learn and develop in a relatively low risk way would be the best step forward for organisations with social purposes. So stage two, this is where you are building and developing your sort of organisation, and you've got a sort of a change agenda. You may be piloting new services or trading activities. You may be strengthening some of your systems, your governance. You've got a good idea of what works and what doesn't. So you're beginning to build clearer pictures around potential income streams, your social impact. Again, the funding is still often grant-based here, but the expectation of the funders have changed. They want to see clear plans. They want early evidence of how your model is viable and delivering benefit to your communities. Sometimes capacity funding here is really important. So if you can secure funding that's going to improve your governance structure, your financial reporting systems, the way you measure your impact and report it, this is going to be very important to unlocking funding in this stage of your development. Generally, you're going to be looking to have or have already generated some trading, and hopefully you're going to have your first set of annual accounts. Most funders are going to want to see this, and at this stage it's going to open up a lot more funders that potentially weren't available in the initial stages. So there's a little bit more funding out there, but again, it's still operating in that competitive grant environment. You might encounter things like blended finance, which is a mix of grant and a small repayable element. A good example of this is probably Unlimited as a funder. So they have a scaling up grant that also has up to £50,000 worth of loan finance if you meet their eligibility criteria. They want social enterprises that have generated £18,000 in trading over a year in order to qualify for that scaling up grant. I think at this stage of your development, it's useful to note that if you are anything other than a registered charity, from years 1 to 3, you will be reliant on grants to get you started, and you will be reliant on grants to fuel your development. But you need to be considering how you're going to develop income from trading in order to keep you going as an organization. If you get to year 3 and you haven't moved that dial from a grant reliant organization with some income to an income generating organization with some grants, then you might need to consider the structure of your organization. I'm going to cover sort of organizational structures in a little bit more detail later. But if you're always going to be reliant on grants, then you should be really considering whether you register as a charity or a charitably incorporated organization, because there's always going to be grant funding opportunities for you. Whereas as a CIC with more than 3 years worth of trading, it's going to be harder for you to demonstrate to the funders that they should continue to fund you. That's not a hard written rule, but in my experience, when you get to year 3 and beyond as a CIC, it becomes more difficult, because CICs were essentially created back in 2009 to allow social enterprises to generate income from trading activities and bring in small amounts of grant income, not the other way around. Stage 3. So this is typically an organization that's been around for 3 to 5 years, got a track record of delivery, strong leadership, good governance systems in place, and a predictable income stream. It's at this point that the funding conversations you're having start to look quite different. You're going to be looking to expand services. You may be looking to open in new locations or actually invest in premises for the first time. You could be looking to invest in equipment to scale up trading activity. Traditional grants, primarily beneficiary focused. They're not overly interested in organizational development. There are some funders like the Paul Hamlin Foundation that will help organizations develop, but they're few and far between. So it's at this stage that social investment can become a realistic option for organizations. So as I said, this is another term for loan finance, but there's a difference. The funders here care about the social purpose behind the organisation before they're looking at financial returns. You can't normally unlock growth through grants alone because they won't help you buy a building. The sort of social investment agenda changed that. Lots of grant funders realised that by giving a charity £400,000 to buy a building that then sits on their balance sheet wasn't necessarily a good use of their funds. So they bought in social investment vehicles in order to basically do a purchase and lease back scheme. So they'll buy the building for you and then they'll lease it back to you at a normally favourable rate. They keep their money locked in their balance sheet. They get the growth of the building over the next 25 years. They also get a return on that investment through the rent that you pay. So, you know, if you want to buy a premises and have complete control over it, then that's where social investment funding may look like an option for you. I think the important point here is that the investment and any type of social investment, it's got to be linked to growth around something that's already working. It's not designed to rescue an organisation that's struggling with its basic business model. Use right, it's a really powerful tool, but if you use it too early, it can create serious financial pressures for you. Again, Unlimited, they're a really good example. They've got a growth impact fund. They can provide you with investment and support, to get you investment ready. They can also offer loans for anything from 200,000 to 1.5 million. So, you know, it's a big consideration. They also do equity funding, subject to how you have set yourself up. They can put in up to 500,000 in equity. Final stage. This is an established organisation. This is one that's got stable and predictable income, been trading for 5 years plus, probably owns some of your assets, and have a good financial grounding. At this stage, traditional finance could be appropriate depending on what you're looking to do. Loan, asset finance, these are options that are available to you for upgrading facilities or even smoothing out cash flow. There's a lot of ethical and social lenders working in this space. Again, the same principle applies. Debt best works when income is reliable. Borrowing to cover shortfalls or plug gaps is just too much of a risk. Any money that you borrow has to be linked to increased income generation. Charity AIDS Foundation, that has a venturesome impact fund. It's open all year round, and they can give you anything from 50,000 to £1 million. The eligibility criteria is got to be registered in the UK, got to have trading income of over 75,000, and you have to have been trading for more than 1 year. So there are other opportunities to fund your organisation out there that aren't necessarily linked to grants. Grants are a great way of starting your organisation and generating impact and growing it. But as you move forward, looking at other opportunities for funding based on your business model is definitely worthwhile considering. I think we're going to do a quick poll, which is to best describe your business structure. That's just going to give us a sense of what we're potentially talking to. Or who.
So people are starting to vote. We've got 100% CICs at the moment. Only a couple of votes coming in. So, anybody else? Okay. They're trickling in. So as it stands at the moment, we've got no charities, 12% CIOs, 50%, so half of people here are CICs, and then 12% again unincorporated, and the rest are limited companies. So
Great.
That's how we're standing at the moment. So a bit of a mix across the range, but no charities are here.
Okay, that's fine.
Not
fine.
joining us live anyway.
Okay, so I can understand why there are a larger number of CICs. It's a great place to start. It's a relatively easy setup and a light touch governance. So yeah, great place to start. The actual structure will have an impact on funding eligibility, because it's not just about what you do, it is about how you are set up and how you are governed over the long term. So grant funders are looking for organizations that can prove that they've got a benefit to the communities they are supporting, that surpluses are reinvested, and that there are certain protections like the asset lock in place. Now, if you set yourself up as a CIC, those are generally key things that are in place when you register. Governance matters because funders want to see that decisions are made in the interest of the community or the beneficiaries that you have been set up to serve, and that it's not there for private gain, basically. If you were a registered charity, or we have some CIOs, then most, if not all, charitable funding routes will be open to you, meaning that grants and social investment is there. As a CIC, if you're limited by guarantee or limited by shares, that's going to make a difference. If you're limited by guarantee, then there are a large portion of charitable funders that will support you and enable you to apply to them for funding. If you are limited by share, there are some organizations out there that still consider you to be a profit-making organization because you can distribute those profits to the shareholders. That in itself can be overcome by having a profit share document, which shows that the distribution of any profits is reasonable and it doesn't support private gain. And then you work that into your shareholder agreements so that it's universal across all the shareholders. But I think from a governance structure, you need to consider how you're set up based on what type of funding you think you're going to be relying on throughout all of your stages of development. So how do you use what we've run through in practice? I mean, I think you have to ask yourself some questions and be honest with the answers. What stage are you at, and not where you think you'd like to be. You need to really consider where you are, because that's going to give you an idea of which funders you're going to need to approach first. You're going to want to ask whether you are pursuing funding that fits the stage of development, or are you actually trying to jump ahead, or are you locking yourself in that inertia of just chasing grant funding all the time? Clearly, the structure that you've chosen is going to support the types of funding that's out there. But most importantly, is the funding that you're seeking going to help you move forwards and become more sustainable, or is it just going to keep you on the survival hamster wheel? Thinking this way is going to shift your approach to funding from being reactive to maybe being strategic. It's going to stop you from chasing whatever is available and get you to start to choose funding that strengthens your core model and reduces the risk to your organization over time. I think the key takeaway for me is that the goal isn't simply to get funding. It's to get the right funding at the right time for the right reason. grants, investments and loans, they've all got a role to play in the life of a purpose-led organisation. The key is understanding when each one becomes appropriate, making decisions that support your growth, your stability, and ultimately, and most importantly, your long-term impact. You can match funding to the stage of your development and your organizational structure. It's going to give you a much stronger foundation for applying and actually achieving sustainable growth. Okay, thank you for your time. That is the end of my presentation. So I think we're going to revisit questions.
Are we on to questions? Excellent. Okay, so we've got a little bit more chat about the evaluation. So probably for both of you then, what's the need in it being independent? They're just trying to understand the reasoning behind it.
Well, so I suppose the reason for an independent evaluation is you could be accused of marking your own homework. So the idea of having somebody come in and look at the project and evaluate it against a set of parameters for the funder, as opposed to you doing it for the funder, should give them more faith that the evaluation is robust and proportionate. I think that's the reason that most people are asking for independent evaluations.
And then a follow-up question to that is, can they build the cost into the application for the evaluation? So can they put that as a line on the project costs? Is that acceptable? Well, I suppose it depends on the application and the funder, does it?
It does, yeah. I mean, some funders will pay for evaluation. If you're going to national lottery reaching communities, they expect an evaluation and will pay for it. The Art Council will expect an evaluation and pay for it. So yes, you can, if the funder is asking for it, then the funder will normally pay for it.
Okay. So more of a sort of specific question, but do you have any experience of successfully raising money for schools? So this is for somebody who wants to sell their services to schools, but are expecting they would be expecting their services to be bought through grant funding. Is that feasible, or is that something that schools can apply for grant funding? I suppose that's a bit of a governance question, isn't it? That wasn't really covered in the types of governance. I suppose schools are a different type of governance arrangement in themselves, are they? They
are, yeah. And so what generally happens with charitable funding is charitable funders, grant funders, they won't fund something that they think is a statutory responsibility. So schools tend to fall underneath that. So they may, for instance, fund school meals or breakfast clubs. That's something that schools can apply for. And things that are outside of the curriculum, they can sometimes apply for. But generally, my experience of this and some of the organisations I support, they'll become a CIC or a CIO. They'll apply for the funding and then do the work with the school. Generally, because the schools haven't got huge budgets either, in order to pay for the stuff that you want to do. So that's one workaround. Yeah, so that was going to be actually a follow-up question. I was going to say was that is it sometimes useful to say I'm going to bid that and say I'm going to work with a local school and then maybe not commit to the school, so you're applying for the funding yourself and then delivering the services with your chosen school. Is that a way to do the business that the business could run? Yeah, you would go to the charitable funder, get the funding for the project, and then you would deliver it to the school. You wouldn't make any promises to deliver it until you'd got the funding, basically. Okay. So some crowdfunding. Sorry, just one more thing. So schools can crowdfund. So that's becoming a route for helping organisations who want to work with schools to generate more funding. So I'm seeing that a little bit more often.
Okay, great. So somebody's asking about governance. Where does sole traders fit into that?
Okay, so I mean, a sole trader is not going to be able to access any charitable grant funding. That doesn't mean that they can't access any business funding that may be out there, grants like shared prosperity that have been around for a while. We need to wait and see what the next sort of business growth grant funding is going to be, but that's where a sole trader would essentially fit in that.
Great. And then another one saying they're yet to register, but hoping to register as a limited company. Is there a thoughts behind? Is that the way to go for what the type of funding?
So again, as a straightforward limited company, it's going to block your access to charitable funding. Fine if you're not got a charitable purpose, or if you are not looking to sort of develop your work in that way. So this comes back to what's a social enterprise. So a social enterprise can be any organization that donates or reinvests 51% of its profits into a good cause. So you could be a cafe operating as a limited company that gives 51% of your profits to free trade organizations and free trade associations. So there's nothing to stop you being a limited company there and operating as a for-profit organization and classing yourself as a purpose-led organization. If that's not what you're trying to do, if you want to work with a particular group of individuals that you're going to try to support, then being a straightforward limited company is potentially not the right route, because you are going to stop yourself being able to access the charitable funding that's out there, and that's going to be a block to your growth, because you're going to have to do that from other forms of funding investment.
Okay, I'm going to stick with the governance questions. So somebody's asking, can you switch from a CIC to a CIO?
Yes, you can. It's a very simple paper trail exercise. So yeah, absolutely. And it's something that a lot of CICs do if they get to sort of years 3 and 4 and they realize that there's no income coming from their work and they're going to be reliant on grants. I worked with an organization, RJ Working. They were a CIC for 4 years, and then they changed over to CIO, and it's worked very well for them.
Somebody's just rolling back and just saying, can you just explain the difference between the two? What's a CIO versus a CIC?
Okay, CIC, community interest company, registered with the Companies House. It's generally a limited company, so very light touch governance. You put in your accounts every year, you pay tax on all of your profits. A CIO is a charitably incorporated organization, so registered with Companies House, but falls under the Charity Commission for governance. You will need a board of trustees, and you can still trade under it. It's just a step down from a registered charity, but they're becoming more and more popular because they are slightly more agile than a registered charity, and a lot easier to set up. Hopefully that's answered that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a bit of a follow up to the sole trader. She's saying that they're a sole trader and they're seeking funding to provide workshops through a CIC or NHS social wellbeing. That would be. She's asking, would that be their responsibility as in the sole trader's responsibility to seek, then provide the service using grant funding. Is that what we're saying? So they would be applying for the funding first, or would they be bidding in for NHS? So they'd be using it. I suppose if the NHS have got the funding themselves, they would just be looking at a procurement exercise at that point, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So the NHS can procure from anybody for wellbeing workshops, things like that. If there's a CIC that you're going to be delivering that through as the sole trader, then the CIC need to be the one who are applying for the funding, and then they would just buy that service from you. So you just become a supplier then in their supply chain.
Yeah, but there is an option for them to bid for that funding themselves, I'm assuming.
If it's straight to the NHS, yes.
Okay, so we've got, I'm scrolling back a little bit here. With regard to social prescribing, social prescribers have no funds and they only use the providers who offer services free. But you suggest not to rely on grants. So what is the best route to provide services to the NHS wellbeing services outside of grants, as the NHS only look for free services? Is there a more sustainable approach to social prescribing?
I can give you my opinion, and that is no. Social prescribing came about after the NHS did a cost-cutting study and realised that they could take low-level needs in the community and distribute them across the charitable sector without having to pay for it, and have never taken that money and pushed it towards the providers. Charitable funders like social prescribing projects. So if you're going into social prescribing, then you do really need to consider whether you're going to be a CIC, because you can attract funding in order to deliver that service to people from GPs who are being pushed down the social prescribing route, and help a lot of people with their low level needs, which I think is, the best way forward. Again, if the NHS is your provider, then the NHS, the Integrated Care Board put a lot of money into the VCSC sector by giving it to grant making organisations. So Volunteer Cornwall, Cornwall Community Foundation, they may pick up large pots of money that they then distribute. The difference being, you've got to be a recognised not-for-profit organisation, so that means CIC or charity or CIO, in order to bid for that money.
Okay, so I'm going to stick on the same theme. Somebody's asking, we're a wellbeing CIC for providing physical and mental health. We've been approached by a care home to offer seated exercise. We have the skills to do this, but we're struggling to find a grant funder to pay us for supplying the service. Any thoughts based on your experience? We'd love to help, but we can't unless we get the funding, as the care homes say they have no funds. Sounds like a really challenging situation.
Yeah, I mean, what you would try to do is look for funders that are interested in supporting organisations that are helping elderly people age better, and that would be something that Jackie or I would actually do for an organisation, is go out and try and find funders and align exactly what you're trying to achieve with what the funder's trying to achieve. That's part of the sort of matchmaking service that we do. The other thought would be a crowdfunder, with the care home actually leading that crowdfunding campaign and promoting it externally through the friends and family of the elderly people who are going to benefit from it. That may work. It would depend on how much you're trying to raise at the end. That would be important as well.
Okay, so that's probably a good follow on there. So somebody who's at a CIC at development stage, where are the good places to start exploring possible funding avenues? You mentioned unlimited, but are there any other avenues, perhaps private companies or family offices?
So if you're a CIC, technically donations are income for you. So if you're going to go out and try and get a corporate sponsor, you need to be mindful that that money could potentially be treated for as profits for tax purposes if you don't spend it all within the year. Whereas grants are treated slightly differently for tax purposes within a CIC, and also it's quite difficult to find businesses that will donate to a CIC, whereas it's, again, as a registered charity or as a CIO, it's slightly easier because you've got charitable status. You don't have that reporting governance structure as a CIC. It's incredibly light touch. So in my experience, it's very difficult to raise money from corporate organizations for a CIC. You know, depending on where you are on that development stage, if you're sort of within the first 12 to 15 months and you haven't gone to the National Lottery Community Fund and got £20,000 out of them, then, you know, that would be the first place that I would look to start, because they are a really good funder, and yeah, very, very willing and interested in funding new organisations. Cornwall Community Foundation, again, they might have funding that you could link into. It is about what you're trying to achieve and how that aligns with the funder. That's one of the most important considerations for you.
So is there any, this is not a question for me, is there like a kind of feed or a channel or something that you would suggest to follow if you're looking for potential funding streams? I know there's a lot of kind of pots. There's maybe some kind of local pots that come through for, you know, local infrastructure charges and things like that, but the kind of national or big, the big kind of grant funding bodies, is there a channel or a newsletter or something? I tend to see some of these things that sort of just pop up on LinkedIn randomly. Yeah. So is there places where you think you should follow to kind of keep an eye on some of this stuff?
Well, so there's something called Grant Finder, which it's free to certain organizations under certain sizes. That you can go in and you can do a search, and they send out normally weekly newsletters as well. Now, they are kind of more national grant funding opportunities, but you can do a search and come down to the southwest of England. There are, I think, if you sort of joined Cornwall, Volunteer Cornwall, or one of the Cornwall VCSE umbrella organisations, they have their own newsletters and things like that, opportunities. I think the way I work is I normally find out what the client's trying to achieve first, what funding they need. So what's the project, who's the beneficiaries, what are the outcomes, and then I'll go and match a funder or a number of funders for them to consider.
Jackie, did you want to come back in? Come on camera.
Is it back? Yeah.
Yeah, we're back.
Cornwall Council, they have on some of their community type pages detail some of the funds that are available. I think I've got broadband issues. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. We can still hear you. Your video feeds jumping a little bit. About that. That's all right. I've run out of questions and I've put that in the chat, so I think I've covered everybody. So is there any final thoughts before we wrap up? That's been really interesting, really helpful. You've obviously shared your contact details. I don't know if you want to put those back on screen, or or just find you on LinkedIn, search for you. I'm sure they'll find you both. We've shared all the contact details on our channels as well on the Growth Hub, so you can link up with Chris and Jackie if you've got any final questions, or if you want to reach out to them direct. But if that's it from me, if nobody's got any final thoughts, Chris, Jackie?
No, just
Jackie's prevented from having final thoughts.
Yes, yeah.
It's down to you to make a final thought, Chris.
I think I would come back to what I've been saying, which is before you look at the funding, consider what it is you're trying to do and what it is you're trying to achieve, because that will help you identify whether it's the right funding or not. I think applying for funding can be one of the most rewarding exercises you'll ever do, but it will also be one of the most frustrating exercises you will ever do. So getting it right as much as you can is probably my key takeaway from this. Don't go applying to everybody, because you'll just be disappointed.
Are we going to try and have a final thought, Jackie?
I was just going to say good luck with everybody that's is looking for grant funding. And can you hear me?
Yep.
No.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, and if you do need any help, just do reach out to either Chris or myself, and I'm sure we will be able to spare you some time and help you along the way.
Fantastic. Yeah, and as I say, the Growth Hub is here. We haven't got a funding database, but we can help you with kind of general support, setting up your organisation, maybe some conversations around governance structures and things like that. If you want to have a one-to-one conversation with one of the team around that, to have a bit of a deep dive, and then we can pass your details on to any kind of national support programmes or any information that we've got on our database as well. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you for everyone that's watching on the recording. Well done for getting to the end. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And so, bye-bye now.
Bye.